A lawsuit filed against California's Attorney General Xavier Becerra has been in the works, alleging that he is ineligible to hold the office because he was an inactive member of the California bar for over a decade before becoming the top cop in California. Joining me now is attorney and former Republican candidate for Attorney General Eric Early. Eric, you came up short in that June primary against your Republican opponent, Judge Stephen Bailey, so he is now on his way to challenge Becerra in November. You, not on the ticket, but still potentially very much a part of this race. Some time ago, you filed that lawsuit against Becerra stating that he had not actively practiced law within 5 years of becoming the AG.
Yeah.
You've said your hope is that Becerra might be removed from office and therefore from the ballot. What's the latest? What can you tell us?
Thanks again for having me, Patrick. I was very honored to receive approximately almost 1 million votes from California's voters in the primary. And as the only non-politician in the race, you can imagine how gratified I was, and I still am. Listen, Mr. Becerra was an inactive member of the California bar for 26 straight years before he was appointed Attorney General by Jerry Brown a little over a year ago. He was appointed, he was not elected. He was appointed to replace Kamala Harris when she went off to Washington, D.C. And there's a law in the books out here in California, Government Code Section 12503, that says in order to run for Attorney General in California, you have to be admitted to practice with our state bar for at least 5 straight years before you run for election. And whereas an inactive member of the bar, which is what Mr. Becerra was for 26 years, is admitted, an inactive member of the state bar is not allowed to practice. In fact, if an inactive member of our state bar practices, it's a misdemeanor. Right. So we filed a lawsuit against Mr. Becerra saying he was not admitted to practice for the requisite time period, that his name should not be allowed on the ballot against Mr. Bailey in the general election. So we filed it, and it was heard by the Sacramento Superior Court about 3 weeks ago. The judge up there denied our writ. We took it immediately up to the Court of Appeal in California. Court of Appeal had it for 8 days, which on an emergency writ is very rare.
Right.
Usually writs are denied right away. So for eight days they were seriously considering it, denied. So we immediately took it up to the California Supreme Court. We immediately took it up to the California Supreme Court, and the California Supreme Court asked for emergency briefing from both sides right away, which is very rare that you'll even hear from the California Supreme Court in that a matter of time. And unfortunately, they have now denied our effort up at the Supreme Court. So we have other ways to go here, but it's an uphill battle.
Well, what does that decision tell you? This federal judge decision and this appeal and the denial?
I didn't hear that exactly, Patrick, but if you said, what does it tell me?
Yeah.
Listen, it's an uphill battle when you're trying to get the sitting Attorney General removed for not being eligible to be the Attorney General. But we have a very strong argument. What does it tell me? It tells me that it's going to be a tough day where you find a courtroom that is going to remove his name from the ballot, which is what we're seeking, is that Mr. Becerra's name should not be on the ballot in the general election. But this fight's going to continue. We were seeking emergency relief because we were seeking to do it before the general election, which is in November. We're going to be filing a notice of appeal here, so this matter will be heard by the Court of Appeal here. Unfortunately, it won't be heard until after the general election passes. And if you go by the polls out here now, it looks like Mr. Becerra, unfortunately, will win that election. But another thing it tells me, and what the statute is set up for, is you need somebody with at least a minimum of legal experience to be our top legal officer in the state of California. And Mr. Becerra, who was not a lawyer for 26 straight years, he's purely a professional politician, and he's treating the office as a professional politician would, and it's very bad for the people of California. Somehow, we've ended up with the equivalent of Nancy Pelosi, who is a complete political hack, Becerra's become the equivalent of Nancy Pelosi, but he's sitting in our Attorney General's office. And as a result, you've seen scores of these lawsuits filed against the Trump administration. We need a real lawyer up there, somebody who cares about California, Californians, and all of the problems we have going on in this state, and not somebody who's using the office purely to move up the political ladder.
Well, one final one, Eric. I know we're a little short on time, but what can other Republicans in California or anyone around the country who doesn't support sanctuary status within these sanctuary states, what can they do? I mean, you did well in the election. You did well in the primary. Stephen Bailey, Judge Bailey's moving on. How can they make sure that the momentum remains heading into November? Because there's been a lot of momentum in Los Alamitos and these communities that have really pushed back on sanctuary policies. What now?
Listen, the momentum in California is great, and the mainstream media doesn't cover it out here. We've had over 30 cities, scores of jurisdictions, counties opting out of the sanctuary state laws in this, or the sanctuary state law in our state. There are millions of people that have been opting out of it, voting one by one by one. There's a great groundswell movement going on, and I encourage those people, those great people, those brave people, and it started with the brave people of Los Alamitos, spread like a contagion around Southern California, and then up through Northern California. I encourage the people to keep supporting the opting out from that law, and I supported right away when the federal government, the Trump administration, sued to invalidate the sanctuary state law out here, and we have to keep doing what we can to support the Trump administration to get rid of that law. That law, when I was running for election, I called it the Illegal Immigrant Felon Protection Act. It should not be called the sanctuary state law. That's the way the other side of the aisle is trying to sell it to the people, and unfortunately mainstream media goes along with it. All it is designed to do is to protect those folks who not only came here illegally, but who've been committing crimes, sometimes violent crimes, since they got here. And no country and no state should be protecting people who aren't even our citizens who are committing crimes since they got here.
Right.
It's not being used to protect in our state, 2 million moms and pops who came here illegally but haven't been breaking the law since they got here. It's being used specifically to protect those criminals. They need to be sent out. We need to secure our borders. Our state is broke. We can no longer afford that stuff. So I just encourage the great people of California who've been opting out to continue doing that.
Want to see more videos like this? Click on the link below and subscribe to One America News on YouTube, and call your cable provider and kindly demand that One America News is added to your lineup. Call and subscribe today.